And this all began in the early 1940s. And at that time, as you all know, my audience may know, that Hitler, who had a powerful desire to eliminate the Jewish race, he has called it the final solution, and his activities began as early as the 1930s in Germany, and in 1939, when he occupied Poland and many of the Eastern European countries, Hungary was left alone because Hungary was an ally of Germany. And as such, we were kept away from occupation. But that really didn't mean that we did not suffer from the anti-Semitism's effects. And those were in many folds. Anti-Semitism was rampant in Europe already for a long time. And one of the early stages for anti-Jewish laws were created in the Nuremberg laws in Germany, and that was translated into Hungarian, and a number of the anti-Jewish laws were happening from 1939, 1940 on in Hungary. The advantage of our advantage versus our fellow Jews in the other countries was that we were still living in our own home and we were pretty much together. However, these anti-Jewish laws kept coming from one after another. And just to cite a few, it all began with numerus clausus, which means in Latin that only 1% of Jewish children were allowed into higher education. Then came another law which restricted intermarriage, followed by confiscating of larger properties. And these confiscations were not done in a manner we in America are accustomed to, creating a sale. The officials came into your property and said you as a Jew could no longer own this property, and as such they took it away, and that was it. Whether your grandfather started a farm going back to generations and they worked day and night to make something of it, they didn't care. You were a Jew, you could not own that land any longer. Many laws to be followed. One very serious one came about 1941 or 42, thereabouts. From one day to the next, all the professors, doctors, journalists, scientists, theatrical directors, writers, pharmacists were let go from their jobs for the simple reason because they were Jewish. And naturally, all this created immense unemployment. So the Jewish population, the Jewish community stuck together, and they have tried to support these people. Now, one wonders how come the lawmakers their conscience didn't bother them to enact all these laws. Well, their rationale was that it will be, all these laws, all these anti-Jewish laws will be good for the country. And that was their rationale. So supposedly their conscience was clear for all the bad things they have committed. There was one more very important anti-Jewish law, and that affected us personally. In Europe, it's customary for the young men to enter the military after graduating and spend 2 years or whatever time limit in the military. Until about 1941, all men, without discrimination, were allowed into the military. As of 1941, the Jewish men were called into the military. However, they could no longer wear the country's uniform, nor could they bear arms. And as such, they had to wear their private clothing, and they had a yellow armband indicating they are Jewish. They were given the most menial jobs one can possibly imagine. As the war kept progressing all over Europe, Now the older men were called into this Jewish military group, and which meant that many fathers and husbands were taken away from their homes, and the woman with their children was left home alone. These things were building up in a 5-year span, and by March 19, 1944, Hitler decides that he has to come into Hungary to complete the final solution. And he pretty nearly accomplished that. As I said, March 19, they paraded into Hungary without the slightest resistance. The Hungarian military and government welcomed them like their brothers, and the Germans took over. And they took over with all the experience of killing that they have collected in the 5 years in the other countries. And how was it all done? Very methodically, very systematically. The minute they set foot in the country, the first law came that you had to wear a Jewish star sewed on your clothing, and without that you were not allowed to leave your home. Businesses were closed up. My father could no longer go to his business. So again, there was no money earned any longer. Then, once they have established this, and everything went in an exceptional speed, the new order came that all the Jewish people will be relocated to a ghetto area. And a ghetto was comprised of, in a section of town where perhaps was more heavily Jewish populated. And what they have done, for instance, the ghetto happened to come into my home area. Now, my home was built by my grandfather, and it was a very comfortable house, perfect for the 6 of us. And now the government order brings in the people from the other section of town, and they do not ask you whether you were willing to take in your cousin or your brother's wife or whoever, relative, but indiscriminately they have decided that this house can hold 40 people. So now we are living with 34 other people. And it is, in today's society, unimaginable how horrible that was. First of all, the house had 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom, and enough sleeping facilities for the 6 of us. So we had to accommodate all these people and share. And I was not even 17 years old at that point, and I had my own room and I had my own space, as we say, and all of a sudden people were all over my stuff and touching things that was very precious to me. But it's surprising how fast you grow up and you know how to share, and this is the time I learned to share. These people were very different. In our house we had old people, we had sick people, we had young people, we had babies. So it's a composite of personalities, and getting along, being in a crowded position, it was not a comfortable situation. The atrocities that took place within this ghetto area were in abundance, both legally and, shall we say, illegally. And the illegal part I am talking about, the Hungarians had a neo-Nazi party called the Arrow Cross. This group was comprised of young hoodlums, uneducated, very illiterate individuals who were paid off by the Nazi party to hurt the Jews. So naturally, they took full advantage of it. They did not know what they were doing or understand, but the only thing, they were constantly fed with hatred. Anti-Jewish propaganda was so abundant. Whether you went to a movie theater or you had posters all over the city or in the newspaper, that was constantly bashing the Jews in every possible form. That the war was because the Jews were doing it. They had no food because the Jews ate it, etc. I mean, any propaganda that you could possibly imagine was evident. And it worked. It worked. You feed the people with all this garbage and they buy it. I mean, Hitler started it with blasting all the radio stations with his propaganda, and it reflected now here. So what I'm trying to say is, these thugs would come into the ghetto and without asking, they would walk into your home, they saw, for instance, a painting or a piece of silver candlestick or whatever of value, they would take it and walk out with it. Now, being a citizen of the country for like 4 generations, the police was no longer on my side. The police would not come and defend me because these guys were stealing. They looked the other way. So these were the illegal version of pilfering. Then came the legal stuff. Illegal stuff meant that the government gave out a directive that tomorrow they're going to be at your section of the ghetto and you have to turn in your radios. You have to turn in your jewelry. You have to turn in any cash you have in the house, anything of value. And you better do it because there were many, many atrocities committed if you try to deny. So this was the life in the ghetto. Food was scarce. We were not allowed much to go to the market. If we did, then at the marketplace, we were there like at the end of the day, which all the food was already dispersed. This situation didn't last much longer either. Now we got a directive that we are going to be relocated to another country where our labor is needed, whether for farm work or factory work, whatever. So we bought it. That was the biggest lie one could possibly imagine. But you see, psychologically, this was extremely important. The Germans were so experienced in the 5 years of killing Jews and other nationalities that they wanted to be sure that they can move these people from place 1 to place 2 without the least amount of resistance. And they accomplished it.